Hope Cross.
Hey, how are you today?
Oh, I am good. I cannot believe it's Friday.
Oh, I am so happy it's Friday. What are your plans this Father's Day? It's Father's Day weekend, right?
It's Father's Day.
So,
Yes.
so what are your plans?
Well, Father's Day actually started yesterday because we had donuts with Dad at the school. So you show up, you eat some donuts with your little one, get a sugar high, and then you allow the parents to have to navigate that when they get home.
Well, but the good thing is by the time they get home, their little energy has been expended at school. So maybe that's what we hope, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they do the donuts with Dad at the end of school.
Oh, they got smart.
Yes, and I get it. Props to the teachers and the educators who have a strategy there. Yeah, they load them up with donuts and then say, "Hey, go ahead and take them home." So.
All right. So they used to do that. At least in my town, they still do it in the mornings. So maybe they should start. No, I won't tell the secret. I'll give the parents a break. I won't tell the secret because that's pretty smart. That's pretty smart. So how many dads were able to show up for donuts with Dad?
Oh, the whole room was packed.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The whole room was packed. Which is, yes. Yay. Positivity. It was just me, Hope. I was the only one who stood up to be a donut dad. Or donut lord, as they say. Do you know who the donut lord is?
I've never heard of that term.
It's the dad from Sonic, the Sonic movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I actually think that that's a really great idea. I love the fact that there are avenues that dads can get involved and hang out with their kids at school for something a little special. I think that's awesome. And I love to see it. And I love to see when the moms show up and the dads show up. To me, that's pretty special.
Yeah, shout out to our little girl and our little boy's school. The teachers there are just phenomenal. And the reason we picked them in the first place is because when you walk in, it doesn't feel like everybody is struggling, and in some places you walk in and you have a question and they're like, all right, just give me a second, I'll get to you, and let me find if I can find someone to answer your question. And just that kind of culture, ultimately can lead to oversight and mistakes. But here, no matter when you walk in, if there's a different person at the desk, they're always there to help. And it's not like, well, that's not my job type of thing. So I think that translates to some of the support and oversight with the kids as well.
Absolutely. That makes all the difference, really. That first interaction as you walk in. I remember I had a teacher in preschool and she would stand, and I remember her to this day. She would stand at the door and welcome every child with a smile and a hug. First thing in the morning, it did not matter. And I remember her to this day. So I think that matters as far as setting that atmosphere for the children.
Yeah, and you really, I think we sometimes forget how important our child care workers are, and I might not even be using the correct terminology. I did a keynote over in Kentucky for child care workers and educators for that age group, and you're essentially saying, hey, this age that's so important for our kids, we're giving you complete control to a certain extent to make sure they're safe, make sure they're educated, make sure they're supported in a compassionate way. And also you help them potty train, and also they might throw some stuff and kick some stuff. And logically, you can't explain why that's not a good idea. So just go ahead and navigate all that. Oh, and by the way, when parents come in who are frustrated, you deal with that as well. Oh, and the money is, you don't do this for the money. So I think it's one of those professions that we sometimes overlook. Like, oh, they're just babysitters. No. It's
No.
much more than that.
No, it is foundational to the development of each and every child. And while we're here, I just want to say a shout out to anybody working with children, you are superheroes. So thank you for all you do. And I know for many it's the summer, but not all schools are out for the summer.
No.
So
yeah. And so speaking of donuts for Dad, I go back today for round 2 for our little one, Maggie. Yes. So she's pumped up about it. Get her donuts time too. So I'm gonna have to go on a little extra run because these schools are pumping me with donuts.
So do you just get like one little mini donut, or is this unlimited? What goes on here? What's it look like?
You know what? I'm not entirely sure, because after one, I was like, I got to draw the line. You got to have self-discipline, Hope.
All right.
Now, I will say there were a couple of other dads in there. I don't know if they were abiding by the rules and regulations of the 1 to 2 donut minimum. They were just going to town, but there's no judgment.
All right. So are these plain glazed, or do they have some apple fritters in there? What's that look like?
No, I mean, well, we don't go to a school that would have apple fritters on their donuts. I don't think.
Oh, now if you're out there listening,
I think we got to put those schools cost a little more, Hope.
Okay. Well, if you're out there listening, I would love to hear your Father's Day plans this weekend, or maybe traditions that your family has.
Yeah.
Or maybe traditions you had growing up. I think it's pretty awesome. And then if you want to throw in your favorite kind of donut, I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, I'm not good at math, and time is an illusion, but I believe this is the first Father's Day for me post-adoption. So this is just an incredible experience as well. So with that being said, I need some advice from the other dads out there. What is the ideal Father's Day gift? Like, is it like a Christmas thing where you're like, hey, give me the big grill in the backyard? Is it a birthday thing where you're like, hey, let me just get a flat screen TV? I don't know. What are the rules for Father's Day? Are there gift limitations? Is there a budget? Like when agencies get signed certain contracts, is the Father's Day smaller than the other ones?
I think the grill thing goes well, because if you go to Publix and you look at their BOGOs this week, they are all geared toward dads. It's all about the meat, the grill, the snacks. Everything is dad related. So
okay,
they have some meats, buy one get one. Some of the grill stuff, buy one get one. So I think it's the grill thing, Curtis.
So I need to be on a grill this weekend, if I hear you correct, Hope.
I think so.
I
think so.
So Hope, let's talk about. I appreciate you again, Hope. I always kind of make fun of you that I asked you just to come on to the Where News Network simply to test out the technology with me. And then I was like, hey, Hope, that worked out. So why don't you just be a guest host on episode 1? And now we're in episode 3, Hope, and you're still here. So I'm not sure how this keeps happening. Is this coincidence, or what's going on here? Why are you back again, Hope?
I don't know. I think it started about 12 years ago. I think this is just what happens. You have an idea, or I have an idea. We throw something together and do a little planning, and all of a sudden it's something. So
that's true. Well, let's talk about what that something is, what we're going to discuss here today. Hope, we do want to briefly touch on what's going on in Washington State. A tragic story, broke my heart. After that, we're going to revisit the Job Corps update specific to our Pinellas site, which is the closest site to you and the closest site to me. And then we're going to talk about the Truancy prevention bill, see if that thing got signed in yet. We're going to revisit that. There's also something really cool in West Virginia happening on the foster care side that I want to get your opinion on, to see if that's potentially an idea that some other states could adopt, or if not other states, maybe at least Florida. And then we're going to talk about Florida specifically. There are some bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, that looks like it'll get pushed through, but maybe pushed through without funding. So let's talk about this first story, Hope. And this is more of a, I'm going to be honest with you, Hope. When I heard about this story, this is the one that really broke my heart. So let me go ahead and pull up our first our first opening segment. So first and foremost, Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia. This is a situation in Washington State where during an unsupervised visit with a bio father, he never returned with these three amazing little girls. And then when they went out to the site, they found out that they were deceased. And the individual, the father, is currently on the run. The most updated report is that they do have an idea of where he is. They said they have him surrounded. They just now kind of have to find exactly where in this certain area he is. Hope, we're not here to talk too much about the case itself because that is obviously going to be handled in our court system. But I'll tell you, Hope, when I first got exposed to this story, it takes a lot to get me emotional. But as the dad of a little girl and seeing these pictures, I broke down to be honest with you, Hope, because so let me give you some background and some context to the best of my ability of why this happened. So the father in this case has been granted visitation, just like anytime there's a divorce, you have split custody. And allegedly, the father, his mental health was getting progressively worse. And then he was homeless. So visitation for him, the plan was modified to no longer have overnight visits, but they did continue to allow him to have unsupervised visits as long as he completed some psychiatric counseling and evaluations. So he was granted an unsupervised visit, and his visit was the last time that they ever saw these little girls.
Yes. This is truly a very, very tragic story. I know my heart goes out to Mom because I can't even imagine packing your babies up, kissing them, expecting to see them in a few days, and then that doesn't happen. That is very tragic. Curtis, tell us a little bit about what the background is on Dad here. I know we know he wasn't supposed to have visits, but then they granted it as long as he was having the help that he needed, and obviously that didn't work out. So, what do you think? Something fell through the cracks here. What do you think happened?
Yeah, and so thank you for asking that, Hope. So if you're looking on the screen, these are all questions that are going to have to be answered. And I imagine a lot of these questions are going to be answered, one, after the individual who is located and he gets his day in court. And then as these investigations go, Hope, from our background of working in juvenile justice, these things do take time. But this story really hit at my heart so much. I was like, I gotta do something. I gotta feel like I'm contributing in some way to this particular story because it really broke my heart. So what you can do, and I want to challenge all of the viewers to do the same, is you can file a complaint with the Washington State Family of Children ombuds. And what you can do is you cannot file a complaint about a specific judge or a specific worker, but you can file a complaint to have them look into the choices and the policies and procedures that led up to the decision to allow unsupervised visits. Because the very first thing that came to mind for me, Hope, is if there's a history of a need for psychiatric help that has not been fulfilled yet, and the individual is homeless, why are we granting unsupervised visits with that situation if the priority is to ensure the children's safety? So let's say there weren't any concerns with violence happening. Still, if you do not have a home or a designated location that is deemed safe to have this visit, we need to put some processes in place to make sure that is happening. And maybe that is supporting and lifting up the parent involved and saying, hey, we know you're struggling with homelessness. Why don't we reach out to some local agencies, communities, partners, and help you get a visit in a safe space that you can have a good visit with these children? But instead, we just say, okay, because this is the bio father, this is their right, which I understand that completely. But I feel like that type of rationale, if this was the rationale, Hope, and this is all opinions at this standpoint, right?
Yeah.
But if that was the rationale, I don't understand in an area with kids why we're prioritizing the rights of one, without prioritizing the safety of the ones that are most vulnerable if that decision goes left.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said really wraps it up. We want to protect rights. We want to practice rights, but the rights of one cannot supersede the safety of the child, because that's what the system is designed to protect. It is supposed to be designed to protect the child, the children. And in this case, although we don't have all the answers, we are left asking why. And I think anybody and everybody out there should be asking why, how, what can we do? How can we fill these gaps? Because truthfully, this story made it to national news. How many stories happen that don't make it to national news? And why do we have to wait until lives are lost to make it to national news? The change needs to take place. And that's why we should be asking questions and looking for solutions before this type of headline makes it to the headline again.
Absolutely. And I think this is also a call to action or a reminder for anyone working in this field. Speak up. Don't let just seems a little squirrely, but rights are rights, and just keep. There are no bad questions. You have to speak up in this situation. So getting back to filing this complaint isn't directed at one specific person. It's more just look into how we got here.
Right.
Because again, the part I'm not understanding is if there's an acknowledged pattern of some mental health concerns that are so significant that you court order evaluations, and there's an admission of a lack of stability with regard to living, so much so that you might be living out of your car. In what situation do you say, okay, despite all of that, here are unsupervised visitations without any additional mandate of support? And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying take the rights away from someone, but we're overlooking these areas of concern simply based on what grounds. And I think that's what they need to look into and really investigate and find out on what are the processes that led to this action. Because it's unacceptable, Hope. It can't happen. It can't happen.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes as a people, as the human race, we do get caught up in when we see these types of news stories, we get caught up quickly in blame. We blame dad, or we blame mom, or we blame a system. And while that we do need to turn eyes to what caused it, the first thing is to ask questions, dive a little deeper, find out why, find out how, because, casting blame out of emotion isn't going to stop the next headline. We really have to dive deeper and find out what happened. Where did this gap happen? What brought about the decision to let these visits continue despite the circumstances? And I know, I've read, as far as the documents that I can find, that there was no home and that this was a camping site. He was literally camping in his car, and that's where he was living. So why do we send little children off to that kind of setting without what you said? Let's look for resources. Let's look to our community. Let's look to find some help, because sometimes, I would say 90% of the time, these things can be avoided when there is some kind of resource or help available.
Yeah. And Hope, again, this isn't like this was just a split custody situation that this came out of nowhere. Like, oh, how did this happen? This was in the courts for a reason.
Right.
They were scheduling these hearings for a reason. They were modifying the custody plan for a reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I want to challenge the viewer to go ahead and search and look into this case a little bit. There's additional details of what happened that I don't want to discuss right now, because quite frankly, it'll get me angry. But what I do want to challenge you to do is, if you do look into this case and you feel compelled to, there is the information on your screen now that you can file a complaint. And I will tell you that our systems respond to, I don't want to say the more people that want their voice to be heard, the more likely that you're going to be heard. So I encourage you, if you feel compelled to do so, file a complaint. Again, when you go through the process, you're not entering in judges' names. You're not entering in any client or people. You're just saying this particular case, you want an investigation about how we got to where we got with regard to the supervisions, and were policies and procedures met and followed as they should be with regard to in the best interest of these little girls, because it's horrible.
And so, Curtis, when this number is called, and I know that you called, walk us through what that would look like. What are callers going to find on the other end of that phone? What kind of questions are being asked? What kind of statements are being made? What should they be ready to say?
Yeah, and so I actually didn't call the number, Hope. I just went directly to the form.
Okay.
I'm very big I'm a documentation guy. So, based on my experience, sometimes when you call and they'll say we'll take care of it, but without any documentation, what happens. So if someone wants to call, I definitely encourage that. I don't think you're going to get a lot of answers because of the confidentiality of the case and the sensitivity of the case, and that it's an ongoing investigation, which is where I say more go to the form. And when you complete the form, the main thing to keep an eye on is you are not submitting a complaint or investigation about a particular person. You are just inquiring or requesting an investigation into the processes themselves to find out where things followed appropriately, because you can't speak directly about a case in the system if you don't have direct involvement with that case itself. So you want to write your concerns from a process standpoint in order for you to complete that form. So it will ask you things. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but essentially asking you if you're a party to the case, or if you're connected with the children involved. You're not. You are just, again, writing this as on behalf of the systems that led to this particular situation.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And I absolutely agree. When things like this are done, that paper trail is important. And if you're out there and you are a part of services that support children in any state, we want to encourage you, provide that encouragement. Thank you for what you do, but also encourage you to, I know it's hard. I've been in this kind of work, and it's easy to become overwhelmed or to, I want to say maybe miss signs, right? Sometimes that can happen, but just to keep an eagle eye out, because this can't be undone. These little girls can't come back. And so it's important for these processes to really be looked at, and for every single T to be crossed, every single I to be dotted, especially when it comes to life and death.
Well said, Hope. Well said. So I'm going to keep an eye on this case too. Hopefully that gentleman is found, and we can move to the next part of this process to get answers for these little girls that deserve it. And if you are a parent, give your kids a hug. Obviously, don't be afraid to ask important questions that have to do with anything with your kids. And then if you work in this field, speak up. You can't take back the words you never said. So speak up. All right. All right, Hope. Let's move on to our next story, and that is Job Corps. Hope, Job Corps. We've been talking about Job Corps here for a minute. So let's give our first update here. So at St. Petersburg, we're going to talk specifically to our Pinellas campus because that's the one that's closest to us. As of right now, things are still trending for there to be no funding for Job Corps on a federal level, but let's hone in the discussion a little bit to the campus closest to us. So at a rally Tuesday, students and staff from Pinellas County Job Corps will get a chance to share their stories and a plea to keep the facility open. At the rally, supporters of the facility plan to make their voices heard, and they're going to give students a voice and they're going to have elected officials out there to weigh in on the future of Job Corps and what Job Corps means to them. So the next stage in their process is to have a rally, have youth out there, have members of the community, and talk about how important Pinellas Job Corps is to the Pinellas County community. And I also have here, Hope, I know last time we talked about this story, we talked about some of elected officials getting involved, and I had not seen much on that end at that stage, but now that has changed. So let me pull something up real quick if I can. It looks like Councilman Corey Givens was speaking on behalf of Job Corps. So I have some video here. Let's go here. Let's go ahead and just hear a little bit of that, Hope.
Okay.
Job Corps Center. Job Corps is the largest residential workforce training program in the country. And I had the privilege and the pleasure prior to being elected to city council to serve over here for 4.5 years. I worked as the work-based learning coordinator, the ACT coordinator, and I saw firsthand that Job Corps changes lives. Since its inception in 1964, the Job Corps program has graduated over 3 million alumni nationwide. Through its 99 centers, this program provides career technical skill training to young people across the country. Ages 16 to 24, those same young people that many folks in society counted out, Job Corps gave them a second chance. That's right. To many young people, Job Corps is more than just a school. Job Corps is a home away from home. Job Corps is a safe haven. Not only has Job Corps prepared these young people for the workforce, and you'll get to hear from some of those people in a moment.
So let's go ahead and their Hope. So it is nice to see whatever side you're on, that our elected officials are out there at least giving their opinions and speaking on where they stand with this. Because that's my big thing with our elected officials is where do you stand? Like, are you a supporter of this? Do you think it needs to be modified? Should we keep it? Is it good as is? I think it's important when they come out and they have a voice in that process, especially because this directly affects their constituents. These are young people that potentially could be back into the communities without a plan for their career or a plan for their education. So where we stand right now at the Pinellas Core campus, looks like they serve about 250 plus youth. And again, I think the main thing they're looking at, and we talked with Malin last episode about this, is they also provide the housing, meals, and mental health care. So if the Pinellas Job Corps site is closed, not only is it, what's my plan for education, what's my plan for my career, but am I then going to be out of stability, the basic needs that we might need, and also those mental health needs, which we just talked about in our first story. Some of the extreme consequences that can come from not supporting that side of it. So your thoughts on the Job Corps stuff, Hope? I know we talked about it now for 3 episodes. Any additional opinions on what you see happening here?
Well, I'm a story person and a data person. So I love to hear that over 3 million people have successfully graduated the program and entered the workforce over the years that Job Corps has been around. I would definitely love to, hear some stories. I think that's important. I do love it when officials get involved, because it is easy to sit back, no matter what side you're on. It's easy to sit back and let things happen. But when you're in a position like that, it's important that you take a stand, that you use your voice, that you use your resources. And to add to that, we talk about asking questions, right? And finding solutions. Taking a look at Job Corps and trying to say, hey, and I like what Malin said when we talked, was it the week before last, right? Or last week. It's been a long week. I like how she said, there are some things that we could reform, that we could update, but overall, this is a very strong and very successful program. So I love the fact that, there's areas for growth. And I think that's important. I think every organization has areas for growth. But taking a look at it and actually seeing how can we pour in to this program. And while we were talking about this, my question about these young people ages 16 to 24, you talked about how a lot of these services are wraparound services: housing, mental health, food, school, education, career. What's in store for them if Job Corps is not funded? What's happening with these young people? What's the next step? Do we know any of that right now?
Unfortunately, I don't know if there's an answer to that, Hope, because the last I looked, they are on some sort of phased approach where those young people that have housing already in place, those are the first phase that are being transitioned out, and then the ones that don't are phased later. So, and I think that's the biggest complaint is, what was the transition plan, right?
Okay.
Like, what are we doing? And again, this is different than, let's say all of a sudden a private company shuts down and you're out of a bunch of workers. Obviously that is a horrible thing too, because you have people that are unemployed. But I think there's somewhat of an element to, well, that in the back of our mind could happen to a business.
Right.
I'm not sure if these young people in the back of their mind were thinking, hey, all of a sudden this won't be here because people decided it's not worth it anymore, And look, I get it. The other side is going to say, hey, maybe this is a life lesson for them, if you're coming at it from that perspective. But again, I think the answer is reform, rebrand, offer some additional training and credentials that better aligns with where we're going. Absolutely. Automation, AI, right? But don't just say, let's just throw it all out. I'm not sure that's the answer. So we'll keep an eye on the rally. Let me put some information here in the comments. And if you are with us via LinkedIn, and Hope, I don't know if you see this on your end, but I am not able to see through StreamYard if the LinkedIn is even live or not. So if you're on LinkedIn, I know Job Corps is a sensitive or a hot topic right now on LinkedIn. Go ahead in the comments, let us know that you're with us. Tell us where you're at. Say hi or hello, so we know you are there. But let me get some information about that rally in our comments as well for anybody that wants to get involved.
Yeah, and Curtis, I think what you brought to light is really important. I know that there are times we can take a look at closures and we can say, well, this is just what needs to happen. We can look at the black and white of what the news produces. But what we really need to be doing is making sure that we're peeling back the layers. Who is this impacting? And it may be impacting those that we don't personally know, but that domino effect is going to happen. So even if it's this is 99 centers. So the chances are, And I know the Job Corps is maybe about an hour and a half from me, but I have met several individuals that are in relation to that Job Corps. So even if something doesn't directly impact us, or if we think it doesn't, the chances are is it will impact us in some way. So what are ways to roll something like this out better? How can we have a better impact? Because, when I think of young people between the age of 16 and 24, that is a very high risk age. I remember being that age, and chances are they didn't think too far ahead. They didn't have time to think. So I do agree. Sometimes we need those life lessons. However, at the cost of our future, it can be pretty impactful. So making sure that resources are in place, that supports are in place to stabilize these young adults, because what we forget sometimes is the reason some of these young adults are in this particular program is because of the lack of stabilization from their previous lives. So this program has brought stabilization, it has brought hope, it has brought goals, it has brought dreams. So making sure that whatever happens next, that these young people have the appropriate transition plan to stay on the right track is super important.
Absolutely. Well said, Hope. And then I want to give a shout out to our other elected official, Representative Kathy Castor. I apologize if I'm saying your last name correct, but let me go ahead and put her in the comments as well. She has been speaking out too, and those are her constituents over there in St. Pete. So those are the ones she's directly connected with and elected to support. And it does appear that she's in full support of Job Corps and the Job Corps remaining. So that's positive news from the elected official standpoint for those constituents in that area. So we'll continue to keep an eye out on Job Corps to see where it lands. We're nearing the end of June, so
Curtis, I know that there are 99 sites targeted to phase out or pause, right? But I believe weren't there 126 sites altogether? So some of those sites are still up and running. What makes those sites able to stay running and these other ones not? Is it the funding source?
Yes. So those sites that are not being closed are funded separately.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I mean, I could find out for us real quick. Hope, give me 1 second.
I feel like I heard or read that some of them are state funded or private, foundation funded. So that's also a solution. So if you are out there and you are truly a supporter of Job Corps and you have those connections, I know there's a lot of community foundations. There's a lot of individuals who are very wealthy. That might be something to consider, is how can you be a part? Or maybe you just know people, the right connections and the right people. How can you be a part of helping these young people either stay where they are or for the program to develop and grow as it needs to be? So I know personally there's some really great foundations around where I live. I don't know if they're familiar with this, but it's something to bring to their attention.
Absolutely. And that's why I think a lot of it goes back to with some of these programs and organizations, they shift to more of a private donor stream. I know when I was in Kentucky, that Goodwill campus, which was phenomenal, they had private donors of upwards of, I want to say $3 million contributed to that site. And when you do that, obviously you are, I imagine, beholden to your donors. But if you find donors that you're aligned with on the mission from the front end, you should be good. So all of our programs, even our St. Augustine program that we had on last week, what were they doing that same day? They were having a fundraiser.
Yep.
So if you don't have some sort of community engagement, fundraising element of your program, there should be a signal for you to look into that, right?
Absolutely.
So it looks like, Hope, there's 15 Forest Service operated centers that are operated by USDA.
Okay, yes. All right.
Not the Labor Department. So they are not subject to a contract shutdown.
Okay.
And they're currently reviewing their status. So yeah, so just the funding stream is different, so those aren't being touched. But to your point, it'd be interested to look into what are their performance metrics. What does it say there compared to the ones that are run by the Department of Labor? Are there any differences there? Definitely something.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you happen to know that, let us know, because I'm interested. That's something I'm probably going to dive into this week to try to find out a little bit more. And I do believe there's been a 2-week pause, right, on the pause. So is it this coming week that I think we're gonna know more?
Yes. Well, I mean, they're supposed to close everything by June 30th. So I know it's still in the courts as well. So we should definitely know some in the coming week. Yeah. So the United States Department of Agriculture, their sites remain untouched at the moment, and that's more specific to our laws related to farming, forestry, rural economic development. So good for them, for sure. You know, they're not having to feel some of this pressure, but we'll have to see and figure out where we land with our other sites here very soon. Okay. Hope, let's pivot now to our next story, Truancy. And while I'm pulling this up here, Hope, if you want to make a little call to action to some of our viewers to get in the comments with us to let us know that they are here.
Yeah, so if you are scrolling social media, it is lunchtime, it is Friday. You are probably ready to go home, right? If you're not home already and have the day off, you're probably ready to go home. But if you're scrolling through and you happen to scroll across us, we want to hear from you. What we are here for is we are bringing awareness to some very high issue topics that a lot of times we see in the news or we hear in passing. We might feel bad when we hear it or when we see it, but we just keep going and life just keeps happening. So the purpose of this is to become more aware of what is happening, aware of where things lie, aware of how to dive further into situations by asking questions and requiring everyone to step forward and be accountable and provide those answers. And, take accountability ourselves. How can we have an impact? We've talked today about the loss of life of 3 beautiful little girls. We've talked today about Job Corps. We're about to go into truancy and a few other topics. Every single one of these topics should penetrate our hearts on some level. So please stop, listen, get involved, ask questions, share resources. Everyone can be a part of the solution, and you are everyone.
Well said, Hope. I appreciate that. So you mentioned truancy. Let's go ahead and get into truancy. So our last episode, we talked a little bit about a bill in Florida that is focusing more on prevention instead of punishment. So on your screen here, a bill in Florida House would make it easier for parents to attend truancy meetings and for schools to update parents and the state on kids of risk of truancy. The whole point here is, Hope, instead of a child not attending school and then saying now they're truant, so let's lock them up. How about instead we give them some additional supports? This is one of my favorite words in politics, Hope. This was bipartisan. So both.
What does that mean for our viewers out there? What does that mean?
Yes, that means you have both Democrats and Republicans working together to get this bill passed and to create this bill, which is an amazing thing in this day and age, and we love it. And actually had really strong bipartisan support. So there are really no other hurdles to this one here, Hope. It just needs to get to the governor's desk and have him sign it, and is anticipated that he will sign it. Some other elements of this bill that we didn't talk about so far, and so I want to get your thoughts on these a little bit, Hope. The services provided by the Florida Department of Children and Families would need to include career development and addiction treatment as needed. So not only are they addressing the truancy side, but they're saying, hey, we need some additional career workforce training as part of that. And then obviously addiction treatment. If the child is truant, there's usually some other underlying factors that are happening. It's not just I hate school. So that's good. A child must be represented by an attorney at every court appearance during a contempt of court or child in need of service proceedings. So the child itself should have some sort of representation to advocate for them as part of those hearings. A parent or guardian must be invited to the child's case team to determine if those resources that are being put in place are in fact they are getting the services that the case plan says they are. The parents get to be on there to have a say in that conversation, which I think is great. Whereas asking why and requiring everyone, right? So I'm all good about that. The Department of Justice must ensure a court that a shelter has enough beds before placing a child in the facility. I feel like that's a common sense one, but if we got to put it in there, I'm all for it. And then this last one, I don't know how deep we want to dive into this, Hope, but pharmacists or wholesalers would be allowed to import prescription drugs from Canada for the use in juvenile detention facilities. So my thoughts are that must have something to do with cost, right? So we're not going to get into a deep dive on the healthcare situation in America. That's not necessarily what this is for, but it sounds like this is a pretty comprehensive bill. Again, it's bipartisan. Everyone's on board. It's ready to be signed. And I'm happy to see it. Hope, any final thoughts on this particular legislation?
Yeah, I am actually thrilled because when we think of truancy, I think that sometimes we just think, hey, these kids don't want to go to school. And, that may be it, but it may not. A lot of times truancy goes a lot deeper. And that's why you're seeing all of these different bullet points within this legislation is to really take a look at every single bullet point. It's not always kids that just don't want to go to school. There's usually something that is a lot deeper. I know in my community, there's a lot of agriculture work. So a lot of young people here, by the time they're in maybe middle school, high school, they're wanting to go help dad in agriculture or help their uncle in agriculture. And they see more value in working to bring money into the home compared to going to school. So we do need to peel back the layers and find out, why is this happening? Is it different in different communities? Does it have to do with something with the justice system? But if we just start yanking kids out of their homes and communities and putting them in facilities, that's also not the answer. So I like the fact that we're just waiting on it, right? Waiting on it to be signed. And then we can really take a deeper dive and try to fix some of these problems. I also believe that truancy legislature can save lives. I don't know if you've heard about the little boy, I believe, that was passed away, and it was found by truancy officers. What was it? 2 weeks, I think, had gone by. I'm not sure. I just saw that this week. So, this is a really important legislation, really important issue. Sometimes we overlook it, but I'm thankful that something is being done and it's agreed upon by all parties present.
Agreed, Hope. And it does look like, just on a logistics side, Hope, that for whatever reason today, our LinkedIn audience, we're not getting their comments on this side. And we're also not able to see their engagement either, which that kind of stinks, because I know a lot of these topics are pulled straight for our LinkedIn audience. So just know, for our LinkedIn audience, you're with us. We see you're with us. I have my phone in front of me, so I am able to see your engagement on that end. I just can't see it through the actual stream. But I do want to shout out Ken, who left a comment that says restorative practices are so needed in our schools, which, Hope, I'm interested to hear what your opinion is, or what your experiences are in DeSoto County, but it's very hard in Pinellas to get involved with the school system and actually get in the schools to provide these services. Now, I see both sides of it. One is time is definitely an issue. Who you bring on to campuses is such a sensitive topic these days, obviously, because we keep talking about children's safety. So we want to be as strict to that as possible to make sure that the children on campus are safe. But I do think we do need to do a little more in bringing outside agencies and resources right on site to the school to help wrap around these services and provide education to these kids that are outside of their normal curriculum, because it's a captive audience, right? The kids are there. The parents a lot of times have to go there. I would like to see more, as Ken wrote, restorative practices needed in the schools for sure. And with that, you just got to give them more resources themselves, right? You need more support, smaller classrooms, more support on the mental health side. I know in my experience, when I used to be a mentor at schools, they sometimes would just have one mental health professional there for hundreds and hundreds of students,
right,
which would just leave them maybe 5-10 minutes per student, giving them more resources. And the thing is, they don't even have to, I think a lot of these situations, hire a bunch more. There's these resources in the community that are willing to come in and help. So it does sound like that this bill is going to place more of an emphasis on that, and it's going to be law. So they'll have to, which is nice. And because I'm all for creating laws that then our individuals who help people can lean on to better help people. So, but I'd say all that say, I want to shout out Ken. Thank you for joining the conversation. For our LinkedIn group, we are not able to see your engagement on this side, but we can see you through our phone. So definitely join the conversation. Let us know your thoughts on this. Any final thoughts on the truancy side, Hope, before we go to our next segment?
I'm just hoping that it can go ahead and get passed. That way that when this coming school year starts up, not even the school year, but in the summer, while everything's revving up and getting ready for the school year, that some of those things will be in place by the time our kids return to school this coming school year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, Hope, I'm looking into all these bills so much here. Boy, are there a lot of processes to get these things passed.
Right.
You got the House, and then we send it back to the Senate, and then the Senate makes a change. So we send it back to the House, and the House might like one of the change, but not to the other. So they'll send it back, and eventually, too many sendbacks, they'll just be like, never mind, and it'll just die wherever it is. So, goodness gracious, to get stuff passed. But these are important things. So do not stop. And I also put our phone numbers in the chat here, that if you do want to contact your officials to lend your support to this type of bill, to say, hey, we support this thing getting passed. Let's get it done. That's a way you can make your voice heard as well. All right, Hope. Let's go to something outside of Florida if we can. You want to take a trip outside of Florida?
Oh, I'm always ready for a trip.
So we have over in West Virginia, they want to improve their child welfare practices, and specifically to foster care. So they have invested about $780,000 to help address placement delays, which I think that's in every state. How long does that child sit in care? How long are they in a group home versus being placed with a foster parent or an adoptive parent or a non-relative? And what they also want to do is add listening sessions for the community that'll have family, staff, and youth in attendance, so that they can get their thoughts, ideas of people who've actually lived it, to then use that to improve some of their systems. And they've already been holding some of these listening sessions across 8 locations. Again, there's foster families there, caseworkers there, legal professionals there, community members. This is a way to get the community involved, which I think is a great thing. So what I want to do here, Hope, is I have a video of an example of one of these listening sessions. So let me go ahead and share this to my screen, and let's get it started. And for those interested, I'm actually doing one of these on a virtual webinar at the end of July, which maybe we could talk about here in a second. So here we go, Hope.
State leaders spent the last 2 weeks touring the state to host 8 listening sessions to get input from families, caseworkers, providers, and the communities regarding their problems with the state system and how they could strengthen it.
We want people to tell their story, but also to use their experiences to help us inform change within the system.
The changes being implemented, transparency around child fatalities or near fatalities, and revamping the child welfare dashboard to make it easier to use and access data.
After conducting an internal review of circumstances of 6 fatalities or near fatalities that occurred between 2021 and 2024, the Department of Human Services will be implementing a new transparency policy that interprets the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. There was no excuse to keep this information shielded from the public. No excuse. We are going to be different. We're going to be upfront with the people of West Virginia.
Other reforms include more training for supervisors to be better prepared and deeper looks into incidents that have occurred, and giving caseworkers the chance to gather more information when needed.
These are tough issues that our state faces. But these are issues that have to get fixed. They're not going to get fixed overnight. These are difficult, they're complex issues. But what I can promise you today is that we want to be honest, we want to be transparent, and we will be accountable for what happens.
So, Hope, initial thoughts on the listening tours, the transparency, some of the efforts there West Virginia is putting forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of what we've been talking about, right, Curtis? We've been talking about asking questions and requiring everyone, right? And that sounds like what they're doing. They've seen an issue, the issue has come to light, and somebody has said, okay, this is enough. We cannot have this any longer. We need to bring these things to light. We need to bring people together. We need to have conversation. We need to find solutions, and we need to hold ourselves accountable for applying those solutions. So I'm all for this. And I think it's important. I noticed that in bringing the different people together, it doesn't sound like they're just bringing the adults. They're bringing the adults, but also the youth who are being impacted, because every voice matters when it comes to these situations. And when you are able to host these kind of community conversations, you're getting a bigger picture instead of just one group's perspective. You're getting the caseworkers, you're getting the schools, you're getting the youth, you're getting the foster system, you're getting the parents. You're able to get every perspective, and that's what's going to make the solutions more solid. And he did say it's not going to happen overnight. And I know these kind of things, they don't happen overnight, but we have to start somewhere. And it sounds like they're starting in the right place by bringing people together, having conversations, asking questions, and putting processes in place that are going to hold themselves accountable.
Well said, Hope. And some of the critics to this argue that it's a little bit of a theater, more PR than policy. Some argue that these listening sessions and these listening tours is just people rehashing problems that they already know exist. And the more we talk about it, the less action we actually take. So, and I could understand a lot of that perspective. My thing is, just because efforts to have, let's say, conversation and transparency did not lead to solutions in the past, doesn't mean now that's a bad course of action. That just means for whatever reason, we didn't have the wherewithal or the resources or the oversight to continue it from there. But let's say if they're taking a strong action and actually doing something now in West Virginia, you can't skip that part of the plan just because that part of the plan didn't result in the outcome you wanted before. So I really want to challenge people that in order to usher in any type of change, you need to have buy-in for the people that have to execute the change. And you're not going to get buy-in from them unless you give them a voice and a say. So I do think having these listening sessions, having these open conversations are a very good start, as long as that start leads to some action for sure. I mean, I'm actually having one July 27th, Hope, through all of our streaming platforms. We're having a foster care fireside chat where I'm going to be collecting questions until that event to answer about our adoption journey, our adoption experience, some of the processes around it. And then I'm also going to get individuals who work in the system or are familiar with the system to be a part of that conversation to help answer some of those questions as well. If you are someone who would be willing to answer those questions, contact me. Let's get you on. I have noticed that there are some that are somewhat hesitant, which I get, but are willing to maybe provide me with some education separately, and so I can better speak to it. So if you can help in either way to make that happen, I'm all for it. But yes, and it's really disappointing, Hope, just that it takes some children dying to start this type of initiative. But you know, I'm the fact that they're starting it can get us in the right direction. And quite frankly, 738,000 is what I think they can figure that out, you know. I think it's something the taxpayers over there want. So I'm all for it. I would actually like to see something in the community over here in Florida doing something very similar. So we're going to keep an eye on this and see if it actually has an impact. Hope.
Absolutely.
Thoughts on this?
I think it's in the right direction. You know, we can't action takers. I like to take action, but taking unguided action is as dangerous as taking no action. So the conversations are the place to start so that you know where to start taking action. And I think that's where the accountability piece comes in, is if everything is being done in the public eye, they are going to hold themselves accountable and the public can hold them accountable. So that's a separate second process to make sure that something is done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Hope. You got to start with the conversation, but you got to do more beyond that. So right. Let's talk about then. Let's get back and end our show here. We are going to get back to our state, our hometown, but we are going to stay in the foster care arena. All right, Hope. So we have two bills that are passing through. Both look like we're doing some really good things on the foster care side. And I love, especially from my background, and you shared on one of the episodes, Hope, that you were also adopted. I love seeing that we are advocating for change and additional supports for the foster care system. I think bipartisan, I think this is a nonpartisan issue. This shouldn't even be a sides issue. These are kids that got removed. They didn't do anything to warrant being removed. And now they are in someone else's care. And someone else is responsible for their safety. And a system, at a lot of times, is responsible for their safety. If that's not a system that we're not constantly trying to get better and improve in, then I'm not sure what we're doing, to be quite frank. So let's talk about two bills. We got SB 712 and HB 1127. So we have a Senate bill, and then we have one in the House. And I was going down this little rabbit hole and finding out the bureaucratic process of all of this. And what they ended up doing on this one is just combining the two. Yeah. I'm going to talk about these like they're two separate, but then they also keep note that they got combined. But while I'm also we're talking about these like they're two separate, is because one could pass while the other doesn't, or they could both pass, or they could pass without funding. So, you know, let's take a look. Let's start here, Hope. Let's talk about SB 712. So their Florida Department of Children and Families is one step closer to getting a $3.3 million foster care pilot program and recruitment of child abuse investigators. State senators approved this across the board on Wednesday. They had a few questions, not much debate. DCF would get most of the money, the $3 million, to develop the pilot program to place children with behavioral problems in a foster family setting rather than a group home. So instead of a child having some mental health needs, obviously being placed in a group home or residential facility, instead they would be placed in a foster home, which theoretically you get that one-on-one support and care for whatever that crisis or that mental health need that that child is going through. This does target high needs youth. So consider your youth with your most behavioral mental health needs. And again, this is all about family-based care instead of institutional placement. A lot of the Senate pushed this through really without any issues at all. So initial thoughts, Hope, on the premise of using this money so essentially you'd have to use this money to, you're going to have to recruit and train more foster parents because there's already a shortage, right? So now you're talking about are we going to need more, we're going to need those that are willing to take in these difficult placements with regard to some of the behavior, right? Which is needed. So that money's obviously, imagine, is going to go to recruiting, high emphasis on recruiting, training, and preparing these foster parents for these type of cases. So before we go and look into a little bit more of this and what happens in the House, initial thoughts on this type of bill?
Well, I think if it's successful, I think it's something that would play out in the long run, would be very beneficial, because what we are taking a look at is child first, child safety, child well-being. And when, I know we have a need for residential and I know we have a need for group homes, but if a child can receive the needs met in a family setting, then to me, that just reduces the trauma. It reduces the instability for that child. And in the long run is just healthier overall for that child. So I'm all for it. I would love to see how, what kind of training, what kind of cohort they're wanting to unroll. Because I think if it's successful, I think it's something that we should definitely have everywhere.
Yeah, I think when you talk about just sustainability for that child to have a smooth transition, I imagine if you are able to succeed in a home environment, that transition to then adoption or long-term placement is going to be smoother than if you've had to thrive the majority of your time in a group home or residential facility. Right. So that definitely makes sense. My thing on this is we got to make sure that a lot of that money is going towards the training and getting them some high level and, quite frankly, some intensive training to support these needs. Because I imagine, too, one of the most difficult aspects of this is these children are also the ones whose placements get disrupted more because behavior occurs at the home that the foster parents can't manage. And then they go to a residential or group home, and perhaps that group home doesn't have the needs in place to support that. So then they get moved to another group home. And with every single move, there's elements of trauma.
Right.
So we would have to recruit the right people from the jump. It couldn't be just, we need foster parents. So just anyone that has a heart, let's do it. I think for this population, it has to go higher level than that. It needs to be, you're recruiting people with a mental health background, possibly, your social worker backgrounds, psychology backgrounds, individuals who've worked in child welfare to be foster parents, and you're training them with some high quality training as well. And then I imagine you're going to have to, I don't want to say incentivize because that's not the right word, but a lot of that money needs to be invested into the parents that are going to have to execute this. But not just I'll pay you to do it, but I'm going to set you up for success. So
right.
Those are my initial thoughts on that, Hope.
Absolutely. It's definitely going to have to be more than just somebody who wants to sign up to be a foster parent. I think the more experience, because if we peel back the layers of this, children in these cases usually end up, you and I have a lot of experience in the justice system. There are a tremendous amount of youth who end up in the juvenile justice system, but they started out in this type of setting where just people were not trained, or they didn't know how to meet the needs of these kind of youth. So it was easier to place them in a group home or a facility rather than keep them in that family setting. So yep. I think this closes the door to the easy way out and meets the needs of the children, because not every child that ends up in a residential facility should be there, especially when it comes to something that could have been met in the home.
Absolutely. And again, quite frankly, this isn't a child that is with their bio parents, and these parents have just chosen to not put an emphasis on mental health because they don't believe it or whatever the situation is, right? This is children that have been removed, and the whole premise of why they're being removed is because the situation that they're leaving is worse than the situation they're being moved to. In other words, you're moving them because you're saying I can put you in a better situation than you currently are now. Right. So if that's the theory of why you're moving them, then why are we not investing as much as we need to invest into that place that we're moving them? Like, I don't, it shouldn't be we're just moving you somewhere because it's a little safer than where you are. We should be moving you somewhere that overdoes it on supports for that particular child. So my initial impression is this is great. As long as, again, it's carried out in some of the ways that we talked about with that recruitment piece and who we're recruiting and how we're getting them involved. So let's look at the other part of this bill, which is considered the companion part of this bill. So this is also part of the pilot program. This requires DCF to maintain a professional recruitment program to fill long-term vacancies. This will also address some of the individuals that we are recruiting as part of, and let me pull up another one, as part of our CPIs, our child protection investigators, that we're also recruiting. So remember how we were talking about, Hope, foster parents recruiting ones that have a background and understanding how to manage some of these situations. It sounds like they want to send some money towards doing the same thing, but with staff, like CPIs. Right. So instead of bringing someone in who's a CPI who has little experience with the dynamics of the child welfare system, or I've never been a CPI, but I've worked with CPIs, and some of the stuff they experience and the environments they walk into are some of the most difficult, just for lack of a better word, that you can have. So instead, they want to focus on recruiting the right people for that, as opposed to constantly being stuck in this cycle where they're just trying to fill spots. So that's where a lot of this money will go as well. And again, these are companion bills. So they look similar with a couple differences. Let me pull this up here. So the Senate bill includes the funding. So the Senate passed a bill that includes funding for the foster care pilot and some retention bonuses for child abuse investigators. The House bill includes more oversight to ensure that those things are successful, including a case management work group, a study on Florida's ability to serve sexually exploited youth, legal protections for CBCs. So essentially more oversight and accountability. Where this thing is kind of stuck, based on my understanding, Hope, is that Senate says we're good to go and the funding makes sense. Let's make it happen. The House says, hey, we like it, but we don't want to give you your funding until you prove that you can actually do it. So here we are stuck in that little sweet spot of politics of saying, is this thing going to get passed or not? There is a possibility that it passes, but it passes without funding. So that would be like saying, hey, Hope, we approve you to build this new house, but you're not going to get any money to build the house. So that might be tough, because then you're looking around and saying, okay, where am I going to get the money? Private funding, other contracts, what's that going to look like? So, the critics say there isn't data that shows that you can be successful in this. You've tried pilot programs in similar areas that did not work. Again, when it has to do with kids, I go back to the idea of just because something didn't work before doesn't mean we should say, hey, can't be fixed in this way. It should be more, well, why didn't it work before and what should we modify to make it better? So I think overall, Hope, when you talk about training foster parents for these high risk cases and finding the right ones, and then the same situation with staff, identifying the right people and finding the right people, could 100% have a positive impact on the system. The idea is should it be funded right away, or should there be some sort of proof of concept before that? So that's what's happening right now. The Senate said, let's go. The House said, no. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but that's where we currently stand. Hope thoughts on those two?
Well, I can understand, when we look at something and we want to see proof of concept. But like you said, when we look at things that happened in the past and they didn't work, it's not a matter of, hey, this doesn't work. It's a matter of this part of this doesn't work. Let's modify it. Somebody has already done some research and found out for us what doesn't work. So now we just have to start with, eliminating what doesn't work and start somewhere else. So we're actually a step closer by using what didn't work before to get our starting point. And I think it sounds like a great idea. We definitely need foster parents that are better trained and better equipped to handle the kind of youth that are being placed in foster homes and institutions. And then on the like side of that, we need our CPI workers to be not just better trained, but taken care of as well. So when I think of that, I think of let's see who our best performing CPIs are and pull those for those special trainings, right? Make them the FBI of the CPIs, right? The elite group. And so you're not necessarily recruiting from outside. You're not necessarily recruiting people who have no experience. You're recruiting people with experience who have already shown extraordinary responses and just everything they've done in the past has been extraordinary. So you have a couple places that you can start. And I think as far as funding goes, what I would love to see is, hey, if we can't fund the whole thing, let's see if we can get part of it funded and start small so we can have a proof of concept for the next fiscal year that comes around. So let's just not do it. Let's see what we can do, make something happen, test the waters, and grow it from there.
Yeah, and I love the idea. I made the video, Hope, of how one of the areas to improve foster care is that interpersonal / empathy-driven communication, navigating difficult conversations. I did a whole video on it. I think there's value in that for sure. And I actually saw an RFP go out recently, Hope, for DCF, where they're pushing out to train their staff in similar areas of like emotional intelligence and all that.
Yeah.
I think all this stuff is great. I think sometimes in this field, and Hope, you could tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think sometimes in helping professions, we rely so much on people's why when they get in this field to keep them there. It's kind of like the just world fallacy a little bit, where in psychology it's you get what you ask for, or if you signed up for it, you can't complain about it type of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's enough to say, hey, just because you have a heart and you have a want to, you knew this was going to be hard, so figure it out. And I think obviously they see that's not enough if they're wanting to invest money into finding more people. So even though it's probably hard sometimes to see the outcomes of doing something like this right away, that's the other tough part when you're talking about spending money. When you're talking about investing this much money on the front end to recruit the right people, hire the right people, train the right people, you are not going to see the results of that for a while. So you have to believe in, there's little ways you can measure it, right? Like retention and, are they hitting their 30-day, 60-day benchmarks? But really the impact that has on the system, that's going to take a while to see. So you have to be patient, but I don't see a negative by recruiting the right people, and then putting investment into retaining those individuals. And then also, I like the premise of being a little more targeted, because just like with the foster parents, you're training a specific population to help a specific population. The same thing has to happen a little bit with CPIs, I would imagine. I understand all cases have some elements of chaos to it, but there's probably some that are tougher than others. So can we put these in little groups so we can better support them as well? So I'm really interested to see where this goes. I'm not sure if approving it without funding makes a lot of sense. Maybe if they had demonstrated in the past that they can tap into some private donors, then I would be for that. But I'm not sure if that makes a lot of sense. For me, that might send the wrong image, because you'll make this announcement that these efforts have been approved and that you support them, but then on the back end, the money's not there. So people are going to think, oh, it just fizzled out. Here we go. Here's another example of this idea failing, So perhaps they go back to the drawing board, figure out a way to structure the funding so that they can also see the impact is happening in a pilot way while it's going. I'm not sure, but this is definitely something that I think there's value in. I'm happy to see that they're working towards. So yeah. I hope the House can get together and put a plan in place that everybody can agree to.
And if it's able to pass, even if it's able to pass without funding, it may pass without funding this year, but next year there may be an opening for funding. So if it's already passed, then that step is done. You don't have to do that again. You just have to move forward with finding a way to fund it. So it could be a good thing, even if there is a delay. It's a starting point. So I would like to see it passed in some form, whether it's as it is right now or in a smaller capacity. But I would like to see it started, because we cannot keep looking at these issues and nothing being done. Something has to be done.
Well said, Hope. And as we near the end here, let me put Ken's comment on here. Ken just put an awesome comment for us. Said, thank you, Curtis and Hope. Amazing sharing. Keep up your much needed work. You're both giving a voice to those who feel voiceless. And Ken, we appreciate you saying that. That's one of the main reasons we're doing this live stream. And Ken, as a thank you, if you could email me at curtis@speak4mc.com, I want to send you a copy of both my books. I'm going to autograph it for you. I got two here. Cape Conversations, How to Communicate with the Florida Child Welfare System, and Cape Conversations, How Superheroes Communicate with Children. Ken, go ahead and send me an email at curtis@speak4mc.com, and I want to get those in your hands. I appreciate you hanging out with us for the majority of this day, even though we didn't know you were there because the LinkedIn thing's not working for us. But it looks like it is. It looks like it is now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ken. I think that's a nice way to wrap up our episode, Hope. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to do a little cherry on top of that. And Ken, when you email Curtis can share that with me, and I can send you a copy of my books as well. So that way you will have a lot of reading to do this summer. So Ken may not email you.
Yeah, because I just wanted to listen to live stream, and now you're trying to get me to read 3 books. Awesome. And then Ken says he could pick them up. Awesome, Ken. Oh, you're gonna be at the Wraparound Conference over in Cocoa Beach.
Oh, yay! So
if that's the case, it's all good. We could meet in person. We're not gonna have to deal with any postage. No UPS. Hope I was telling my live stream recently when I was doing some personalized books that going to UPS is a journey, and it's a challenge. You know, I always get behind a lady who has to send out 6 things to 6 different people with 6 different addresses, but she can't find where she put 3 of the 6 addresses. So I just hang out at UPS for a while watching that journey. So I don't know about you, Hope.
Yeah. I totally understand. I try to go to the post office about twice a year.
Good for you.
If I don't have to go, I will do it all from online. So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay. It looks like Ken says reading rocks.
Okay. Yay. Awesome. So he's excited. We have a reader. Thank you, Ken. And thank you for showing up and being a part of what is happening, not just in what we're doing here today, but in everything you're doing on your end. So that's number 1 is show up. You have to show up for anything to happen. You just have to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So to recap, Hope, we talked about in Washington State, the tragic incident with those 3 little girls, what people can do to get involved. We talked about an update with Job Corps and the Pinellas site. They're going to have a rally next Tuesday if you want to have a say in that. We talked about the Truancy bill that is all but done. That's going to focus more on prevention instead of punishment. We talked about some really cool things that's happening in West Virginia for the foster care system in West Virginia. They're going to do some listening tours, community workers, parents, and then apply what they learned to some actual legislation and policies. And then we talked about those bills that are happening with the Florida foster care system right now, where it looks like they're trying to put a real effort into training, recruiting foster parents that can handle those high risk, high need mental health needs youth, in addition to identifying and recruiting staff that better fit some of the things that they're going to come across. So they're not constantly trying to plug holes and stop the sink from sinking. They can actually keep these staff. So we have a lot of things going here, Hope. We covered a lot. Get involved, make your voice be heard. In order to be aware, it means you're asking why and you're requiring everyone. It truly does take a village, and you being part of this with us is a nice step there. Get involved, call your legislators, and let's inspire some change. Hope, final thoughts?
I'm excited to see some movement. And I know that as we step up and we use our voices and we use the platforms and the resources we have, that we can make a difference. And I think that everybody needs to know that. You don't need to do everything, but you do need to do something.
Well said. Do something.
Do something.
Even if it's a phone call.
Something. Something is always, it can be small, but do something. Be a part in some way.
Absolutely. All right, Hope, I appreciate you. This is another fun episode. We really got into some meats and potatoes here about some real things that are happening, and it was a joy to have you as part of that conversation. And hopefully we'll see each other soon.
We will. And to all of the daddies out there, happy Father's Day weekend.
Yay! Go get some donuts.
More specifically, Curtis, happy Father's Day to you. It's a very special Father's Day, and you are a very special father. So.
Thank you, Hope. I appreciate that.
Now, before I cry, bye.
What if we helped people who help people? Speak4mc provides training, motivational talks, personal reflections on parenting, resilience, and working through adversity. Welcome to Speak for Maggie's Change. Hit that subscribe button.